Pentagon concedes Russian threat as Trump-era policy shop faces revolt in Senate hearing. Washington, D.C. Austin Dahmer, President Donald Trump's nominee for the Pentagon's top strategy post, broke with the administration's usual script Tuesday, conceding under oath what officials have long avoided, that Russia poses a security threat to the U.S. For months, Trump's second administration has oscillated between gestures of rapprochement toward Moscow and bursts of hardline rhetoric. Dahmer's admission came as the Pentagon faces bipartisan fury over a series of opaque decisions, from quietly pausing aid to Ukraine to withdrawing a U.S. brigade from Romania, a move that startled allies along NATO's eastern flank. What began as a routine confirmation hearing for a mid-level Pentagon role quickly morphed into a broader airing of grievances against a defense bureaucracy senators say has become both politicized and adrift. For over 2 hours, members of the Senate committee from both parties unloaded on what they described as a chaotic and uncommunicative Pentagon policy operation led by Undersecretary of Defense for Policy Elbridge Colby, a one-time strategist turned lightning rod. "Man, I can't even get a response," fumed Republican Senator Dan Sullivan, Republican Alaska, adding, "And we're on your team." Sullivan, who has built a reputation as a defense hawk closely aligned with Trump on deterring China and supporting allies, said Colby's shop had become the hardest to reach in the entire administration. Others went further. Senator Tom Cotton, Republican Arkansas, derided the office as a pigpen-like mess, while Senator Jack Reed, Democrat Rhode Island, the committee's top Democrat, accused Dahmer of cloaking testimony in a veil of ignorance. The frustration reflects a deeper breakdown between the Pentagon's political appointees and their constitutionally mandated overseers. Since Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth imposed new restrictions on staff communication with Congress, requiring all interactions to run through the department's Legislative Affairs Office, lawmakers say even basic oversight has ground to a halt. Ukraine, Romania, and a fraying front line. The sharpest flashpoints involve Europe, where several senators accused Colby's office of acting at cross purposes with both the White House and NATO. At the top of the list, a Pentagon decision last week to pull a rotational army brigade from Romania, first reported by Kyiv Post on October 28. The move blindsided lawmakers and, reportedly, Romanian officials, just weeks after Trump had publicly pledged to maintain U.S. troop levels on the continent. This decision did not appear to reflect the policy mandate of President Trump, Senator Roger Wicker, Republican Mississippi, the committee's chair, said. Just 2 weeks ago, the U.S. president had said troops would not be withdrawn from Europe. "It's unclear to me how this fits with the commander-in-chief's direction," he emphasized. Dahmer, who has been serving as the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Strategy and Force Development, insisted that Romania and NATO were notified, though he could not name which officials were briefed or when. That admission drew audible scoffs in the room. Behind the Romania episode looms a broader anxiety: the administration's wavering commitment to Ukraine. In recent months, the Pentagon has twice paused weapons deliveries to Kyiv, decisions Trump later reversed after public backlash and quiet pressure from European capitals. "We've seen the policy office differ from the president's policy. Is that good for us?" Senator Rick Scott, Republican Florida, asked, echoing concerns that such mixed signals erode U.S. credibility abroad. For Eastern European allies, the signals are already clear. In Bucharest, where U.S. forces have served as a key deterrent since Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022, the withdrawal is seen as a crack in NATO's front line. Romanian officials privately warned that any perception of American retrenchment emboldens Moscow, especially as Russian forces push deeper into southern Ukraine and expand cyber and influence operations across the Black Sea region. Russia's shadow and the Trump doctrine. That context made Dahmer's acknowledgement of Russia as a continuing threat all the more striking. Within Trump's national security circle, views on Moscow remain fractured. The president himself has alternated between boasting of great relations with Vladimir Putin and privately urging aides to get tougher on Russian aggression. Behind the Romania episode looms a broader anxiety: the administration's wavering commitment to Ukraine. In recent months, the Pentagon has twice paused weapons deliveries to Kyiv, decisions Trump later reversed after public backlash and quiet pressure from European capitals. We've seen the policy office differ from the president's policy. Is that good for us? Senator Rick Scott, Republican Florida, asked, echoing concerns that such mixed signals erode U.S. credibility abroad. For Eastern European allies, the signals are already clear. In Bucharest, where U.S. forces have served as a key deterrent since Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022, the withdrawal is seen as a crack in NATO's front line. Romanian officials privately warned that any perception of American retrenchment emboldens Moscow, especially as Russian forces push deeper into southern Ukraine and expand cyber and influence operations across the Black Sea region. Russia's shadow and the Trump doctrine. That context made Dahmer's acknowledgement of Russia as a continuing threat all the more striking. Within Trump's national security circle, views on Moscow remain fractured. The president himself has alternated between boasting of great relations with Vladimir Putin and privately urging aides to get tougher on Russian aggression. Even some Republicans sympathetic to Trump say the dysfunction undermines U.S. defense posture at a time of escalating threats, from Russia's deepening partnership with Iran to China's stepped-up naval exercises near Taiwan. Europe watches and waits. For European allies, especially those along NATO's eastern flank, the Washington drama is more than Beltway theater. Romania, Poland, and the Baltic states see the Pentagon's mixed signals as potential warning signs of American retrenchment. Every time Washington hesitates, Moscow tests the line, said one European diplomat, speaking anonymously to discuss sensitive internal assessments. If the U.S. pulls back even slightly, Russia fills the space immediately. Trump administration officials insist the U.S. remains committed to NATO deterrence, even as they push allies to do more. But the pattern of reversals, first pausing, then restoring Ukraine aid, announcing, then walking back troop movements, has shaken confidence in Washington's staying power. The bigger picture. The Dahmer confirmation hearing revealed more than bureaucratic missteps. It exposed the uneasy intersection of Trump's America First rhetoric, congressional oversight fatigue, and a Pentagon struggling to define strategy in real time. Beneath the sparring lies a more fundamental question. What does American deterrence look like in a world where Russia is again labeled a threat, but the machinery of government seems unable to act on that premise with consistency or clarity? For now, Congress remains unconvinced. Mr. Dahmer, Reid said bluntly, you've indicated to us that you won't cooperate. That does not bode well for your future role in the Department of Defense. In the halls outside, aides huddled over briefing papers that had arrived too late to change the hearing's tone. Inside NATO capitals, diplomats watched the feed with growing unease. The U.S. may still call Russia a threat, but as one European official put it, a threat means little if Washington can't get its own story straight. Drone war, deep inside Russia, explosions, blackouts, and a shifting Ukraine battlefield. Key points and summary. Ukraine launched overnight strikes against Russian military, industrial, and energy targets, with blasts at an ammo site in occupied Luhansk and fires at oil facilities in Kstovo and a petrochemical plant in Starly Tamak. Regional leaders reported damaged substations in Volgograd and Kursk, leaving thousands without power. Moscow said air defenses downed 85 drones across multiple oblasts. The attacks mirror Russia's renewed winter campaign on Ukraine's grid, aiming to strain morale and logistics. With refineries and depots declared legitimate by Kyiv, both sides are shifting to deep interdiction as colder months raise the stakes for energy resilience and supply lines. Ukraine hits multiple Russian military, industrial, and energy facilities. Warsaw, Poland. Overnight on November 4th, Ukraine and international media organizations reported explosions that rocked a Russian armed forces ammunition facility located in the occupied Luhansk Oblast. Explosions were also reported at a petrochemical plant and several oil enterprises across Russia. In Moscow, the Russian Defense Ministry claimed to have shot down 85 drones in these overnight attacks. What were presumed to be Ukrainian drones were brought down in the Voronezh, Nizhny Novgorod, Belgorod, Kursk, Lipetsk, Volgograd, and Sverdlovsk oblasts, and in the Republic of Bashkortostan as well. Explosions related to the ammunition facility were reported during a drone attack on the site, located in the city of Dovzhansk in the Luhansk Oblast. The city is located about 50 miles southeast of the city of Luhansk proper and has been under occupation by the Russian forces since Moscow invaded the Donbass in 2014. The petrochemical plant blasts reportedly took place in Sterli-Timok, a city located in Russia's Republic of Bashkortostan. The city's mayor, Emil Shaymardinov, announced on November 4th that part of the city's water treatment plant had collapsed due to the explosion. All emergency services are currently at the scene. The cause of the explosion is being investigated, he said. 5 people were reportedly working at the water treatment facility, but no casualties or injured personnel were reported among them. Ukraine attacks across all of Russia. Other explosions in the Russian city of Lipetsk were reported by independent media outlets as the Trevoga, Ukrainian term for air raid siren, was blaring. The Lipetsk air base is situated approximately 7 miles from the city and serves as the main pilot training center of the Russian Aerospace Forces (VKS). It is regarded as the functional equivalent of the U.S. Nellis Air Force Base in southern Nevada. According to the independent media outlet Astra, explosions also occurred in the Russian city of Kstovo in the Nizhny Novgorod Oblast, which corroborated reports that had been posted online by local residents. 2 oil refineries in Kstovo, the IBUR Kstovo and Lukoil Nizhegorod facilities, also reportedly caught on fire during this attack. An attack in which Ukrainian drones had also targeted the Lukoil Nizhegorod oil refinery was also reported on local Telegram channels. Explosions from the drone's warheads resulted in a large fire at the refined oil products facility. As with so many of the other attacks by Ukraine's drone force on Moscow's oil industry, video footage was soon being posted online that showed multiple fires burning at this facility. Local Russian television and monitoring services all pointed to the oil refinery as the most likely target of this attack. Power generation targeted. As the calendar begins to move into the coldest part of the year, millions of Ukrainians are bracing themselves for another winter of power cuts and possibly even blackouts. Russia is once again conducting a campaign of attacks on Ukraine's energy grid. Analysts and officials say that this year, Moscow has shifted tactics, targeting specific regions and gas infrastructure. The idea is to ensure that the regions left cold and dark in winter are those where it has the most negative effects on morale. Ukraine is attempting to respond in kind, as seen in the past 2 days, in Russia's Volgograd Oblast, among other regions. An electrical substation was damaged due to falling drone debris, according to the region's governor, Andrei Bocharov. During another nighttime raid, Alexander Kinstein, the governor of Kursk region, reported that a substation in the city of Arylsk had been attacked. More than 16,000 residents in several different areas were left without power. Several days before, on October 30th, a fire broke out at a thermal power plant in the Russian-occupied Luhansk Oblast. This resulted in a widespread power outage across the region, which was also reported by the independent outlet Astra. Reports could not be immediately confirmed regarding the details of any of these attacks. Ukraine's government has said on multiple occasions that it considers Russia's oil refineries to be legitimate military targets, on the grounds that profits from the fossil fuel industry fund Moscow's military and defense production. Ukraine's military regularly strikes military targets in its occupied territories and deep within Russia as well. These are all part of an effort to disrupt Moscow's ability to supply and sustain its war against Ukraine. Russia-Ukraine war should stop with ceasefire at current contact line, Ukrainian official says. Russia's war against Ukraine must be stopped by a ceasefire on the current line of contact, and further discussions on territorial issues must be conducted by the leadership of both countries, according to Serhiy Kyslytsya, Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine. I think that the position of President Trump and of Ukraine is the same. The war should stop with a ceasefire at the current contact line, and then all negotiations should depart from the current contact line, Kyslytsya says. He also stresses that further discussion of territorial issues should be entrusted to the leadership of Ukraine and the Kremlin. According to the first deputy foreign minister, Ukraine has already made significant concessions to the Kremlin, so there is no point in expecting new ones. We have already made many concessions, so I think that it's not up to the Ukrainian government to please the Russian government, Kyslytsya concludes. New peace plan for Ukraine. Ukraine, together with EU countries, is working on a plan to end the war along the current front line. The plan itself consists of 12 points. Its implementation will be handled by a peace commission chaired by U.S. leader Donald Trump. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky confirmed that U.S. leader Donald Trump agreed that the only acceptable compromise for Ukraine is to stop hostilities along the current front line. Immediately after meeting with Zelensky on October 17th, Trump called on Ukraine and Russia to hold their current positions on the front line. He also stressed that both sides could declare victory. Russian and Ukrainian troops battle in ruins of Pokrovsk. Moscow/KYIV, November 4th, Reuters. Russian and Ukrainian troops fought battles on Tuesday in the ruins of Pokrovsk, a transport and logistics hub in eastern Ukraine that Moscow has been trying to capture for over a year. The Ukraine's military said fierce fighting was underway in a part of the city that was key for Kyiv's frontline logistics. It said additional special forces had arrived there and more weapons and equipment were being sent. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said he spent the day visiting troops near Pokrovsk and in nearby areas, including Dobrapilya, where Ukrainian forces are conducting a counteroffensive against Russian troops. Writing on the Telegram messaging app, Zelensky said military commanders reported on the stabilization of the defensive line and coordination with adjacent units. Attention was given to strengthening our defenses and providing the soldiers with everything they need. Russia's defense ministry said its soldiers had cleared 35 buildings of Ukrainian troops. It also said that Russian forces were squeezing surrounded Ukrainians near the town of Kupiansk in the Kharkiv region, about 100 miles, 160 kilometers, to the north. On Monday, a spokesperson for the General Staff of Ukraine's military reaffirmed, in comments to the Interfax Ukraine news agency, that not a single military unit was encircled in the Pokrovsk sector, with peace talks at an impasse in the fourth year of the war. Russia says it has the initiative on all sections of the front, yet it has not captured a major town since taking Avdiivka in early 2024. Ukraine says the fighting is largely stalemated and its territorial losses have been marginal. Onward Drive from Pokrovsk, Deep State, a Ukrainian project that maps the front line based on verified open-source images, on Tuesday showed that Russian forces had pushed further into Pokrovsk and its environs, though it showed much of it still in gray, beyond firm control of either side. In an update published on Tuesday evening, Deep State said, "The situation remains critical." It said there were districts of Pokrovsk where Russian forces were digging in and building up positions. It was no longer possible, Deep State said, to contain Russian troops in the south of the town, and at least one nearby settlement was also probably lost. Pokrovsk had a pre-war population of some 60,000, but most civilians fled long ago. Capturing it could give Moscow a platform to drive towards Kramatorsk and Sloviansk, the two biggest remaining Ukrainian-controlled cities in the Donetsk region, which Russia wants to capture in its entirety. Russian military blogger Rybar said on Tuesday that Moscow's control of Pokrovsk was gradually expanding, but a complete clearing of the city is still far off. Ukraine's strategic city of Pokrovsk. Why is Russia pushing hard to take it? Russian forces are advancing inside the eastern Ukrainian city of Pokrovsk, destroying trapped Ukrainian military formations and repelling Ukrainian efforts to break out of encirclement, the Russian Defense Ministry said on Monday. Ukraine's top military commander Oleksandr Syrsky, who has estimated that Russia has over 100,000 troops fighting in the area, says his forces are pushing hard to try to dislodge Russian forces and are broadly holding their ground. Following are key facts about Pokrovsk, which Russians call by its Soviet-era name of Krasnoarmysk, and the long battle for its control which began in earnest in mid-2024. What is Pokrovsk? Pokrovsk is a road and rail hub in Ukraine's eastern Donetsk region, with a pre-war population of some 60,000 people. Most people have now fled, all children have been evacuated, and few civilians remain amid its pulverized apartment buildings and cratered roads. Ukraine's only mine producing coking coal, used in its once vast steel industry, is around 6 miles, 10 kilometers, west of Pokrovsk. Ukrainian steelmaker Metinvest said in January it had suspended mining operations there. The city lies on a key road which has been used by the Ukrainian military to supply other embattled outposts at a technical university in Pokrovsk, the region's largest and oldest, now stands abandoned, damaged by shelling. Why does Russia want Pokrovsk? Russia wants to take the whole of the Donbass region, which comprises the Luhansk and Donetsk provinces. Ukraine still controls about 10% of Donbass, an area of about 5,000 square kilometers, 1,930 square miles, in mostly northern Donetsk. Capturing Pokrovsk, dubbed the gateway to Donetsk by Russian media, and Konstantinivka to its northeast, which Russian forces are also trying to envelop, would give Moscow a platform to drive north towards the two biggest remaining Ukrainian-controlled cities in Donetsk, Kramatorsk and Sloviansk. It would also give Moscow its most important single territorial gain inside Ukraine since it took the ruined city of Avdiivka in early 2024. Russian President Vladimir Putin says Donbass is now legally part of Russia. Kyiv and most Western nations reject Moscow's seizure of the territory as an illegal land grab. Some Western military analysts, like Rob Lee, a senior fellow at the U.S.-based Foreign Policy Research Institute, say that capturing Pokrovsk would hand Russia an important win, especially if it can do it by the end of the year. But though important for operational reasons, Lee says taking Pokrovsk would still leave Russia a lot of work to do when it came to taking control of the rest of Donetsk and the two important fortress cities of Kramatorsk and Sloviansk. Why has it taken so long? Russia has been threatening Pokrovsk for more than a year. Instead of the full frontal assaults it used in earlier battles like the bloody campaign for the similar-sized city of Bakhmut, Russia's military is using a pincer movement to gradually encircle Pokrovsk and threaten Ukrainian supply lines. Russian forces harry Ukrainian troops by sending in small units and drones to disrupt logistics and sow chaos to their rear before sending in larger reinforcements. Ukraine says Russia's offensive has seen its forces sustain huge losses. Moscow says it is Ukraine, with its significantly smaller population, that is at risk of running out of men, and that its own slower tactics are designed to minimize casualties. An incursion into Russia's Kursk region by Ukrainian forces last year, which Moscow fought back, slowed the Russian attack on Pokrovsk too. What is happening now? Ukraine has rushed to strengthen positions in the city. There is fierce fighting in the city and on the approaches to the city. Logistics are difficult. But we must continue to destroy the occupiers, President Volodymyr Zelensky said on Sunday. Russia's top general, Valery Gerasimov, chief of the general staff, told Putin on Sunday that Russia had blocked a large number of Ukrainian soldiers in the area. Deep State, a Ukrainian project that maps the front line based on verified open-source images, shows Russian forces pushing into the city. Though much of it is still in gray, beyond firm control of either side, the Ukrainian military said late on Monday that Russia did not fully control any district in Pokrovsk and that its own forces had made gains near the town of Dobropilya in the same region to try to force Moscow to divert its focus away from Pokrovsk. Reuters was unable to verify battlefield reports from either side due to reporting restrictions in the war zone. Ukrainian military says it struck refinery in Russia's Nizhny Novgorod. Ukraine's military said on Tuesday it struck an oil refinery in Russia's Nizhny Novgorod region east of Moscow. The General Staff of Ukraine's Armed Forces, in a post on Telegram, said the military had hit the Lukoil refinery in the town of Kstovo. It said the facility provided supplies for the Russian military. The extent of the damage was being assessed, it said. There was no official Russian acknowledgement of the attack, but the governor of Nizhny Novgorod region, Gleb Nikitin, said Russian air defense units had repelled an attack by 20 drones near Kstovo. The Ukrainian General Staff also said Ukrainian drones had caused considerable damage at a petrochemical plant in Bashkortostan in central Russia. Regional authorities in Bashkortostan, about 1,500 kilometers, 930 miles, from the Ukrainian border, said Ukrainian drones had damaged the Sterly Tamak petrochemical plant, but it was still operating. Putin praises capabilities, prospects of new Russian weapons. President Vladimir Putin on Tuesday praised some of Russia's newest weapons, describing them as faster and more effective, capable of ensuring security and strategic parity, and even of use in rare metals extraction and lunar missions. Putin extolled the qualities of the Burovestnik cruise missile and Poseidon super torpedo at a ceremony honoring the experts who helped design and build the weapons. The result you have achieved has, with no exaggeration, historic significance for our people for ensuring security and strategic parity for decades to come, and, we can boldly say, for the entire 21st century, Putin said in comments reported by Russian news agencies. EU's frozen asset funding for Ukraine may need bridging solution, Dombrovskis says. The European Union may need to come up with a bridging solution to keep Ukraine financed in early 2026 if a deal on an EU loan, based on immobilized Russian assets, continues to be delayed, European Economic Commissioner Valdis Dombrovskis said. The European Commission has proposed to use the cash that has accrued from maturing Russian central bank assets immobilized in Europe, mainly in Belgium's Euroclear Securities Depository, as the basis for a loan to finance Ukraine in 2026 and 2027.